Welcome to another chapter podcast with your hosts, Claire and Rebecca.
Do you love books? Well, you've come to the right place. Join us as we discuss all things books.
Welcome to Season 2, Chapter 5 of Another Chapter, the podcast. Now, in this episode, we got chatting to someone who is extremely knowledgeable, not just about writing, but about teaching people how to write. Rebecca, what did you make of our chat?
I found it so interesting. I learned a lot from this.
Yes.
Like, there were so many nuggets of advice that she had about, I suppose, from someone who is a well-established writer, but also someone who works with writers, which isn't, not everyone can say that they have that kind of dual aspect to their career. Mm-hmm. So, being able to get advice from both someone who has written, I think, is it 10 books, or released 10 books at this point, as well as helping so many other people get their books out there. It's an excellent episode as regards, information for anyone who would like to get writing themselves, or has a book in them but just haven't had the confidence to go for it.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed recording this episode, I have to say. I think I could have stayed chatting all night, and that kind of reflects itself in the length of the episode. So I hope you'll forgive us, anyone that is listening, for a lengthier episode than originally intended, but it was just absolutely enthralling to listen to someone speak about the art form of writing and about what it takes to discover your voice as a writer, and getting to know the background of your characters and everything before you even sit down to put pen to paper. It was just really interesting to hear how that side of things can unfold for somebody. That it becomes so second nature, really.
That's it.
That's it. She was describing it. Yeah,
I really liked how, when she spoke about the differences between her early books, like we'll say even the unpublished ones, and how she writes now, and how she has evolved as a writer. That was so interesting.
It really was. So if it was me, I would definitely be boiling the kettle or throwing on my headphones and going for a bit of a stroll, and taking a bit of time out to enjoy an interview with Sam Blake.
Okay, so our guest tonight is the creator of Inkwell Publishing Consultancy Group, the award-winning online writing magazine Writing.ie, founder of International Crime Writing Festival Murder One, and is possibly best known to most of us for writing crime novels as Sam Blake. So she has taken some precious time out of her, what sounds like very hectic schedule, to speak to us today about her life in the world of writing. So Sam Blake, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Delighted to be here.
Very exciting.
Is there anything that you would like to add to that maybe we don't know about or have we missed?
I suppose I've just taken over as chair of the board of the Society of Authors in the UK, which is the trade union for authors, which is sort of the biggest trade union body, I suppose, and does loads of things, as well as champions authors' rights mainly, but has lots of trust, charities, prizes, and supports authors all the way through their career, really.
Oh, excellent.
So that's the latest thing. And I just think there's something else in the bio.
You're a busy woman.
You've got everything else. I do lots of different bits and pieces. Busy.
But I'd say doing all things that you love, though, and obviously they're all very much connected, but they, and I assume they all kind of tie into each other relatively well as well, do they?
Yeah, very much so. They all dovetail and they're all in that same world. So I do all sorts of bits and pieces. And I work with lots of different people across the spectrum publishing. So as well as working with, being an author and working with authors, I work with a lot of agents and a lot of publishers as well, doing different bits and pieces. So yeah, it's exciting. It's fun. And they're great people to work with. It's a lovely, lovely industry. So
that sounds fascinating. I feel like I want to come along for a bring your friend to work day.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing, I suppose. I don't have any day that's. I was having coffee with an author friend this morning, and there's no ordinary day. Everything's different. There's always something different happening. And whether it's obviously there's lots of Zoom meetings. But I travel a lot, and you never know what's going. I spent 2 hours on Saturday talking to an author about her opening chapters and her plot and how she could develop the story. And it completely varies hugely from big group meetings to individuals to everything. It's great, yeah. But I love working with writers. I love. I suppose it's all about opportunity for me, because it took me a good while to get published in the first instance, and I love being able to open doors for people because I've got lots of connections now, and I see that's quite an easy thing for me to do. So it could be a massive hurdle for a writer, but at this point now, I suppose I understand enough about the business and the industry and what people need to be doing to help them get their work into the right place in the first instance. But then if I can open doors for people, then obviously. So not everybody, obviously, because otherwise I'd be deluging people. But do my best.
That is amazing. I love it.
And actually, which I assume probably we'll say the published part came second, but just I suppose which did come first, the working with writers or the working as a writer?
So basically, I started writing in 1999. My husband went sailing across the Atlantic for 8 weeks, and I had an idea for a book. Wow. And I just started working for an event management company. And yeah, I'd literally started working for this event management company. And so I had the evenings and the weekends, well, some weekends free, because obviously you work a lot of weekends with event management. But I had a lot of time on my hands. I had no kids, had cats, that was it. And it was in November that he went. So it was like long, dark evenings. And so literally I started handwriting. I just had this idea and I started handwriting this story. I didn't even have a computer at home. So I used to take it into the office in the evenings and weekends to type it up. And I just thought it was the best thing ever, this book. It was absolutely, obviously going to be an international bestseller. And but it was amazing because the magic, the bug really bit because the magic happened when I was writing it. I'd sit down on a Sunday. I remember sitting down on a Sunday and looking at 12 o'clock. And when I looked up again, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, well, where did that time go?
That is amazing.
And that's that when you get into writing and you're there and you're in the scene and you're there with the characters, you've no concept of time at all. And it's literally when the magic happens. So, and the bug absolutely bit me. So I kept going and I wrote about 3 books, I suppose, and obviously I was sending them out and I was getting rejected. And the first one I made every mistake on the planet with. I did all the wrong things, so I literally finished it, and I can't even remember if I read it through. I must have done, but sent it out everywhere around the world, and it was duly rejected everywhere around the world. But I had another idea, so I kept going. So I did book 2, and then I did book 3, and I thought that would be the big one. And I did get an editor interested in that, and various things happened along the way. But at that point, then and that was taking me. I was probably taking me about 2 years to write each book, I suppose, at that stage. But I realised that I really needed to learn a bit more about the whole craft of writing. I did a weekend workshop down in Dingle, and it was a complicated story. But the third book was. There was an editor called Trassa Cody who was very interested in it, and I've come across her because I heard her talking on the radio about a book by Julie Parsons, which she'd written, which was set in Dunleary, and Julie Parsons is an awesome author, and I was just so impressed with Trassa because she was great on the marketing side that I'd invited her to come and have lunch with me at this. I was organising some lunches, invited her to speak. As a result of that, she had lunch with me, which is great. But anyway, she was interested in the book, and various things happened, but Julie was the one who was running this workshop down in Dingle. And so when I saw that, I thought, well, the stars must be aligning here because I'm Julie Parsons. It's amazing. And so basically got myself down to Dingle, but I had 2 small children at that point. So I had my husband was working shifts. So I had to fly my parents in from the UK, and I, put the lids on the fridge and the frozen, the whole thing. It was a massive military operation to get myself down to Dingle. I was mad, but I really loved it, and I realised actually, yes, I can write. I'm doing something right here, but I've also realised how much I had to learn. So I remember literally going to bed that evening thinking, well, what I need to do is get 2 workshops or organise something where because I was working in event management, and so I was used to organising stuff myself, and I was Googling, checking out different courses and stuff like that to do. But there wasn't anything that I could do because again, my husband was working shifts, so that I couldn't get away every Tuesday night for 8 weeks. That thing. Yeah, I didn't have any babysitting support here at that stage, and so basically, I decided I'd organise something myself, and I set up something called Inkwell, which was how Inkwell grew. And I wanted to hear from best-selling authors because I thought they know what they're doing. I wanted it to be somewhere nice so that it wasn't, like a drafty hall on a Tuesday evening where the desks are too small, you can't get your knees up, and you're exhausted because it's late at night. So I did them on a Saturday. I did them in a really lovely hotel, and I made a real day, an event of them. So I also wanted to make sure that when you came to one of my workshops, that you had more than one speaker, because I'm a great believer that if you do an event, if you do something like that and you don't bond with the speaker or you don't like them for whatever reason, you're going to have a terrible day. I wanted everybody to come out of those days having had a fantastic day. They had lunch with the author, they had lunch with their fellow people, and there was quite a limited group. So they were really lovely. And so that's how Inkwell grew, and Inkwell became enormously successful, far more successful than I expected, because I literally set them up for myself because I wanted to learn how to write. And I set them up so that they were running during the winter when the kids were in school, and they were the first Saturday of every month, and all things that worked for me. And it turned out that there were a whole load of people that wanted to do things like that too. So they became hugely successful. So that grew, and then that grew into Writing.ie, and then Between the Jigs and the Reels, and I got published as a result of that. But having learned the craft, sort of a long way around, I suppose.
You really worked your way through.
Yeah. Little Bones was my first book, and that was that was the 5th book I'd written. So
that's a slog, but worth it. Yeah.
And have any of, we'll say that the first 4, have elements of those kind of been brought into any of your books since, or they were done, that was it?
No, done and dusted. I was talking to somebody this morning actually again about they had a book that's in the drawer, and I think that's it's very hard as a writer when you start out writing, because you think because every book is your baby, and you obviously think it's going to be amazing, and it is amazing, and it's very hard to understand the fact perhaps the first book won't be the one that gets you published, then it might be the 3rd or the 4th or 5th, but I'm very focused when I want to do something, and I wanted to do this, and also I loved it because I love writing, and it's creating story and crafting story, and characters and locations, and just getting lost in a story is just a wonderful feeling. So it helps if you love it, and that's, I think, really important. But so I just kept going, kept persevering, and got there in the end.
That's amazing. Because we do ask authors, like, what do you recommend for someone that's aspiring to write? And they all say, keep writing, and your first book will not be the one that gets published. And that's a very daunting thing to hear if that's a path that you're interested in traversing. So the fact that it can take so long but then be completely successful as well at the end of it is it's kind of scary and inspiring.
It is, yeah. It's I didn't know it was going to take that long, but then I didn't know I was going to set up 2 businesses and 2 kids in that time as well. So I think that's, life gets in the way a bit too. If I'd known it would take, I sometimes wonder. I remember walking down the pier with a girl I used to work with, and she was like, well, what's this about this book? And I was like, yeah, it's going to be a bestseller. And literally, I remember walking out, and I think back to myself, if I'd have known it was going to be so long before it actually happened, would I have kept going? But I think I definitely would have done, because I did lots of stuff along the way. I met lots of people and had, just made loads of connections and all of those things. But Little Bones, when it was published, it went straight to number 1. It was number 1 for 4 weeks. It stayed in the charts for another 4 weeks. And for a debut author, that was amazing. So that all the time that I'd spent getting there was well spent. It paid off in the end. So it does make a difference, because I think then you're going in I suppose I always think of it in terms of, like, you say, it's very daunting, and if you knew it wasn't going to be the first book, would you keep going? But you have to learn your craft. And I think if you turned around and said to me, do you know something, I'm going to take up plumbing, and I wouldn't turn around and then say to you the next day, well, look, come and replumb my house, I fancy a new bathroom, come and do it. That's really what it's the same thing. You have apprenticeship to serve, you have to learn the craft.
Yeah, that's true.
And the more you can learn, obviously some people and others, some people have more time than others, but it getting it right is really important. So, but just keep writing was the best advice I was ever given. It's from Sarah Webb many years ago.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued actually. Like you said about the first one that like you made all the mistakes, all the rookie errors. So like I'm very intrigued. We'll say even what would be a couple of those, and that maybe like Claire was saying about aspiring writers that they can take them on board.
One of the things a lot of people do that I see all the time is that they take a while to write their way into the story, and it does sometimes take you a while to write your way into the story. So very often the first 3 chapters of a book aren't the first 3 chapters, and it's not until you get to the end and you've gone over it extensively that you really realise that the book needs to start right before the action begins, and that might not be. So one of my books, I remember actually Sarah Webb came to dinner, and I literally had realised that day. But when you're at that stage, changing anything and losing things and deleting bits is like literally like cutting off your right arm. It's painful. And I remember saying to her, it really gets going at chapter 5, and she just turned around and said, "Well, you're going to have to delete the first 5 chapters."
Oh my God,
like, savage. So I hadn't realised that at that point myself. Oh God, yeah. Anyway, but no, the first book I felt I felt I had to prove to myself that I could write. And so there's a thing called the fog index in journalism, where it's a case of, how well can the reader understand this piece that you've written. And so in my prologue in the first book, there were an awful lot of words of more than like 4 syllables. It was quite complicated from a vocabulary point of view. And the fog index, let's just say, was very, very dense. So it would have been it wasn't exactly flow. I mean, I thought it was great. I thought it was amazing, but it was, and then that's a prologue. Chapter 1 was about a guy going home to Dublin to commit suicide, cheerful stuff. But I didn't really know how to write dialogue at that point, so he didn't say anything to anybody. And also, I was dead for the whole book. So he had no place in that book at all. Do you know what I mean? So in terms of plot and development, and all, you have to limit the number of characters in the book, because you can have a lot of people have like a cast of 1,000 as well. And so if you've got somebody who basically is dead from the end of chapter 1, you can say in chapter 2, "Oh goodness me, he died. He went home to Dublin and committed suicide." That's him sorted. He didn't need 3,000 words getting home. So and we never saw what happened anyway. So so it's things like that. But that you learn, but you only learn that. I mean, the biggest thing I think I did was just send it out too raw, because the other thing that you do is you're so excited when you finish it. It's such a huge body of work, and it's taken you so long that literally you send it out straight away. And that happens to so many writers. And it's understanding the fact that rewriting is the polishing part of it, and you need to do that. So Little Bones must have probably had 30 drafts, compared with probably 3 of the, God knows how many of the first one, I can't even remember. No, a lot. So, and it took me about 3 years to write it, I think. So, it's real work and real polish. And then it was ready to go.
And did that 3 years include all those drafts?
Yeah. So it would have taken, I had the original idea. I mean, but even with Little Bones, it was moving and changing the whole time. So there's a prologue in Little Bones that I wrote originally. Before I realised it was going to be a police procedural, I had an idea for the story. And I had the prologue as Little Bones is about an artist called Zoe. She's quite fundamental to the story. And so the prologue was about her crafting this piece of artwork that she was going to take to a gallery. And she does take to a gallery in chapter 3. And it was there was a lot of literary symbolism in this. It took me about 3 weeks to write it. It was only like 1,000 words. I thought was amazing. And literally, by the time we came out the other end, 3 years later, that prologue had ended up as 1 line in chapter 3.
Wow.
Literally 1. It was like 2 lines. It was half a paragraph. It was fine.
Wow.
So because it wasn't relevant to the story, like it was relevant because I needed to know she did it. We needed to make the piece of artwork, but nobody else could see her doing it. Do you know what I mean? So
you are finding your characters and exploring their journeys so that you can understand them, because without you being able to understand them that well, how could anybody else possibly get a grasp on who they are and what they've done and stuff like that? And then you get to put all of that into your draft folder and get rid of it. Which but that doesn't happen now. So now I make lots of notes about the characters and I need to get to know them. But I think that's as a new writer, that's one of the things you need to do. But I know writers that still do that. I have a lovely
Alex Marwood, who's an amazing writer, who's blurred by Stephen King. So that's like, she's proper writer. And she writes 40,000 words of what she calls the stuff before she sits down to write the book. And that takes the pressure off, because it's not the book, it's the stuff that, that she needs to know to try and find the story and find her way in. And I just think that's fantastic. It's just a great way of explaining that sort of, maybe 20,000 words end up in the book, but she doesn't put herself under pressure to find out that until she's written it, so she writes the stuff before she starts, which I think is very clever, because that's a great way of getting yourself into it, because sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes, most books I plot in quite a lot of detail. Up to recently, I've been plotting quite a lot, and then now I've with the Three Little Birds was the first book I didn't plot, and I did plot it, and then I got to chapter 5, and I was going to kill somebody off in chapter 5, but I really liked her, and I thought the reader would like her too, and so I decided not to, but that wrecked the plot, because clearly she wasn't dead. She had that feature. So somebody else died instead. So that meant that everything changed, and I didn't want to go back to this very detailed plot that I had worked out, because I was just like, no, I know what happens. I just have to change bits. And so it was the first time I just really wrote to see what happened, and it worked. So I did something similar with Mystery of 4. I didn't really plot that as well, but that was easier because it was 4. When you've got 4 murders or 4 killings going along the way, then you've got 4 things, stepping stones. So I didn't plot that as well. So anyway, everybody's different, and they have different approaches and do different things and have different ways into a book. But what I'm trying to do now is stretch myself as a writer. So I want to see if I do something different, what will happen. I've just written a book about Paris, which is not plotted at all, and was written completely to see where it went, and I've just sent it to my editor. Wow. So we'll see whether it works.
Oh, wow.
Whether we have to start again. So hopefully not. No, I think it works. It does work, but it's a very different experience.
And actually, just see as you have mentioned Three Little Birds, and you were talking about kind of characters and characterization, like the main character in Three Little Birds, Dr. Carla Steele, is a fascinating main character, and she's very unique. So like this would, I suppose, would be a really good time for us to talk about Three Little Birds and where the inspiration for that came from.
So originally, I run a writers group. It's an online writers group called Writers Inc. And it's a Facebook group, private Facebook group. And we do challenges during the year. So that we've got the group members, and then we go out to the world for anybody who wants to join one of our challenges periodically through the year. And so I work out what the exercises are going to be, and then a whole bunch, we can get 150 people might join us to do a challenge, which is like a week of writing exercises, basically. But my business partner, Maurier, who is the sort of mentoring, she's a business coach. She does all the sort of mindset stuff. I do the writing, she does mindset. Finds the pictures. So I write the exercises, and then she finds the prompts and the pictures and the locations and the characters and all those types of things. And so we were doing a challenge, can't even remember when now, ages ago, and this picture came up of this girl leaning on a bar, and she had long dark hair, and she had a big white streak in her hair, and she had tattoos up her arm, and she had like a nose ring. And I just looked at her, and she just literally set off a light bulb in my head. And I looked at her and I thought, I'm looking at you. You look like you work in a pub, or you work in a nightclub, or that's the type of person. But wouldn't it be interesting if you didn't? Wouldn't it be interesting? Because I'm really interested in letting readers' assumptions on their head. So as a reader, as an individual, we all have unconscious bias. We all make decisions, and we see people or we meet people. And I was really interested in this character. And I just thought, what if you weren't what we thought you were? And I started thinking about it, and she just stuck with me, and that she became Carla Steele. And I was doing a whole lot of research about missing people at the time, and I got really interested in the whole facial reconstruction thing. And I did a facial reconstruction course as well, because I'm like that. And I'm really interested in research.
Real dedication.
Well, I'm interested in research because I'm just like a bit nerdy like that, but I'm really interested in accuracy. That's the key thing. So that when if you are a pathologist, or you're a police officer, or you're a lawyer, or a event manager, then if you read one of my books I want that world to be your world, so that you're not jerked out of it, that it's right for you. And Carla has a PhD, so somehow I had to get myself up to thinking like somebody with a PhD, and in her specialist field. So I knew I needed to have some tools to do that. And so, I did the course. But no, she's a fabulous character, and literally she bounced off the page. When I saw the picture and I had the facial reconstruction, I got her name, and then we were off, really. I love writing. She's brilliant to write. So, so that's her origin story.
She was a very entertaining character to read about. Is there, can I ask, so there's, it's a really, I loved it. I think it's an absolutely fantastic read. Are we possibly going to see more of Carla Steele?
I don't know. I'd love to write more. I need to talk to my agent about that, my editor, because when I wrote it, I did think it was like an extra book I wrote during COVID. So that's my COVID book, I suppose. And I wrote it originally thinking potentially it had serious potential.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. So but I haven't. But my editor didn't. When they took it, a publisher took it. They didn't. We didn't talk about it being a series. Actually, I don't know. It didn't come up in conversation.
Okay.
But she really liked it. So then, because she knew the Paris book was coming. Originally, the Paris book. So basically, it's a contract. You often in publishing, you get 2-book contracts, and then you sort of hop from 2-book contract to 2-book contract. And so, and she was really interested in the Paris book, because I'd had the Paris idea at that stage, but I hadn't written the Paris book, and I had written Carla. So I flipped the contract. I said, look, do you want to get Carla first, because that's done, and then I'll work on the Paris book, which I was anticipating was going to take me much longer because I needed to go to Paris as well. And so it's a 2-book. So the next book isn't a Carla book. The next book will be the Paris book, which still doesn't have a title, a confirmed title. But then we'll see. So maybe Carla coming. I'd love to get back to it. So we'll wait and see. And every single person that's read it, doomed it past the series. So,
I did. I think that the missing friends and everything was just fascinating, and it just feels like you could there's so many different avenues in the story that you could go down. It's really interesting, and I'm a very kind of a, what would you say, like a methodical reader, in the sense that when I come across a book like this, I will have like a notes section on my phone or a little notebook, and I'll be writing down who I think did what and why, what could their motives be, and everything like that. And I was actually really suspicious of Carla's partner for some reason. I was like, she seems a little, I was like, she seems a little bit too enthusiastic about things, and wanting to know an awful lot. And I was going, is she trying to figure out how much they've picked up on what she's done? Like, my brain just goes to so many different routes. I'm looking for stuff that's not there, essentially, and I'm trying to be like, I figured it out ages ago.
No, but you're right, because I'm reading Andrea Maurier's new book at the moment, Someone in the Attic, and there's little bits of that. I met we went out for a drink the other night, and I was like, I've got this bit, I've got that bit, and I'm trying to work out what the connection is between the two of them, and I'd say there's probably zero connection between, because I'm doing exactly what you're doing. I'm looking for I'm trying to work it out. Brilliant, but amazing. So I'm doing that too. And I was saying to her, well, there's this, there's that, and she says she was just sitting there chuckling in the corner to herself. So that's it.
Yeah, she's very good at that.
I suppose that's what we want as writers. We want that. We want you to be. But first of all, we want you not to get it. But I did interview Daphne ages ago, and he was saying that it was amazing what he does is he writes this massive treatment, and he has 3 twists. So he has the first twist that he thinks readers will get, that his regular readers will get. The crime readers will get no problem. Then then the next twist is things that only really super, dedicated crime readers will get. So it's hidden, but if the clues are there. And then the third twist, nobody's going to get. And so that means that you still finish the book on that wow factor. But halfway through, you think you're in the know, and you're just waiting to see if you're right, type of thing. And I just think that's really interesting. So I think we all do that. We all have bits that we think you're going to get. Like in Mystery 4, I felt that, you're going to guess who this is, but you're not going to know why. So there's always going to be that big twist at the end that you're never going to work out why this is happening. You might guess who it is. God, that's a big clue. If you've got a catch, I'll but I'm not, that didn't worry me. It was a why done it rather than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were saying a while ago about how you love doing research, and I suppose how important the research is. So how do you balance, I suppose, the accuracy research-wise with storytelling itself? Like, how do you find the happy medium there, that it's not just coming across as a factual book?
Well, I think that's probably experience. So I know how much to put in now. So yeah, you're not getting information jumps, that you are getting it very much as part of the action. It's all about character action and dialogue. And if the character's doing something, then that's, feeding into that's fed from the research, then it's all going to feel natural, and you're not giving great, lots of information. So I think that's just experience. But you don't use a fraction of the research you do. It's literally, we talk about in writing about Hemingway's iceberg, and you probably use 5% of the research you actually do. So you know a huge amount about something, and then it's the tip of the iceberg that the reader gets. But that's all they need, because if you know enough about what you're doing, it feeds in. And again, it's like knowing enough about, when I'm working with new authors, I talk about understanding motivation and psychology of their characters, and all the backstory, and knowing all of that and being sure of it, but not, you don't need to put it in the book, because it'll sort of seep through, and the reader picks up bits, nuances in a character, how they have their tea, or what car they drive, or whether they wear a watch, or those types of things, the things you need to know, and they will seep through the story.
Yeah,
it's a bit like, I was thinking about writing is a bit like setting up a row of dominoes, and you've got your row of dominoes, but you can take out every second domino and your row will still fall. They'll all still tumble. And that's our role, I suppose. And that's sort of where the research comes in. So I need to know every single domino, but I'm going to be taking out every second one. So that, because you don't need all of them, and it'll still fall.
That's fascinating.
So
I love that.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And is there anything that you learned, we'll say, during, especially like the facial reconstruction course and that you would love to have included in the book, but you just couldn't? Like, there was no point?
No, I think I got, the dates and things are interesting. I did get some of it in because what I found really interesting was the fact that all the tissue depths and the muscle depths and everything were all based on research that was done in the 1890s, when obviously medical ethics were a bit different from where they are today, and they've been added to, that data has been added to over the years, but it's still fundamentally that, and I just found that quite amazing. I did get that in. I think Carla mentions it, or somebody mentions it, but I just found that amazing. And the fact that the first person, and I didn't get this in, the first person to ever have his face facially reconstructed, somebody did it for Johann Sebastian. I think it was Johann Sebastian Bach, was it?
Really?
It was Bach.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure it was Bach. I've got it on a PowerPoint now. I'll have to go and have a look at the PowerPoint to check. But it was done by it was a German. There were the two people who did the research. Most of the research on it were German, and anatomists, and people they were very interested in the whole process. And so there's bits like that, but I didn't get that in. But that to me is very,
and especially because, like you were saying, you wrote this during COVID. And now, like, obviously it's only come out in the last few months. So, like, is it actually really hard to try and kind of think back? Do you all, like, I presume you don't reread the book, do you know what I mean? But, like, is it actually kind of hard to remember details at this point?
Yeah, it is. But it is with all books, because I'm working a book ahead. So when you're reading a book, I put a year ago, and I've probably written another one since. So when Carla's just come out now, since I wrote Carla, I wrote Mystery of Four, and I wrote a kids book, and I wrote I've written Paris too. So I've actually written 3 books since I wrote that book.
Wow, that's crazy.
I think it's only 3. But that means, but what happens is, if I change, the biggest problem I have is that if I change a character name, so I'd start off with a character name, and halfway through I might suddenly decide to change that name, or suddenly realise, I think in the Mystery of Four, I discovered I had 5 people whose names started with S, and I needed to change those. What happens is I forget the names, and so you'll say to me, "Oh, I really like so and so," and I'm sitting there thinking, "Who is so and so? Like, what is that? Like, who is that?" I was on the radio once and I was like, oh my God, I've no idea who I couldn't say any, honestly, but I've actually no idea who you're talking about. Yeah, so that happens. You have to
It sounds like something maybe you come out with.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. We should admit that on air. But yeah, you do because there's a lot of characters. And then if you've changed somebody's name, you remember the original name and you don't remember the new name, especially if it happened quite recently towards the end of the process. So they haven't bedded in with that name. So yeah, so I changed quite a few. I've changed a few names in Carla actually, and I call it Carla, my Carla book. Three Little Birds. So the one at somebody who comes to a bit of a sticky end, I changed her name. And so I think of her with the original name and you know her with the but we're not going to say who it is. Yeah. So she realised quickly.
Yeah. That's gas.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose, like, and as you're saying that you've written so many books since, that even the characters, like, I assume that at times you might have a character that has the name of a character whose name might have changed before, but you liked that name and want to bring it forward. So then that would totally mess up my head. But yeah, fair play to you for navigating that.
Yeah, that you don't repeat a name, or or you could use the old name in a new book. Because the reason I changed that girl's name, that particular name, was because of the 5 S's. Because I suddenly discovered I had 5 people with the same stuff there, so I had to change a whole bunch. And but her original name I could use again. Yeah. So and I'm always, it's very hard to come up with character names. You're always trying to find the right one, and character names tell you a huge amount about the characters themselves. And so getting the name right, it conveys, it's sort of, there's an awful lot happens at a subconscious level, I think, when you're reading. And in the same way that when you walk into a bar and you meet somebody for the first time, you form an impression of them in the first 30 seconds. That same thing happens when you're reading. And so things like names or, surnames or accents or whatever it is, they help form that impression in your head. So it's important to get the tone right, I suppose, of a name. There's lots of them. An awful lot at this stage, and I have to be careful not to repeat them by accident as well, because there's some names I really like, I like the sound of, and once you've used them you sort of want to use them again. There is one name I managed to repeat, was a surname Power. I'm trying to remember who it was now, and it was, I can't remember which books I've repeated it in, but I managed to make it somebody's cousin. I think there's a Power, I think it's Power, I think there's Lily Power in Keep Your Eyes on Me, and then I had a Power in High Pressure. High Pressure is a digital book that it's digital only and audio only, that people can get if they sign up for my Readers Club. You can download that, but it's not in print. It's like an extra. That was another extra book. And I think there's two Power. I think there's a Power in there. Anyway, somewhere along the line, there's another one, and I managed to make them their cousin because then it all worked. But it was, that was sort of accidental on purpose, sort of thing. Again, we shouldn't admit these things on air.
No, I think all these little details are lovely. Sam, you've said about writing the young adult book. So was the one that came out, was that your first young adult book? Because I know the next one is due out soon enough.
The next one's due out in May. Something's about to blow up. Long title, I have to try to remember it. And the Something Terrible Happened Last Night came out last May. So yeah, that was the first YA. And and so it's the same girls again, same school, different scenario, because people really wanted to see again. It's that thing of, it feels like a series. So they wanted to see what happened, where the girls went afterwards. So Something's about to blow up. It was fun, a lot of fun writing it. It's quite quite twisty, and it's got lots of different characters in it, and lots of different sort of it's got rave fest in it, the confession side, which is in Something Terrible, and it's got sort of diary entries and texts and a whole load of really interesting stuff. I was able to play with structure. So Something Terrible, it has an interesting structure because you don't find out who the victim is till the last third of the book. So that was a way of playing with structure. And with this one, again, there are no chapter headings in this book. It's just the location, the people whose chapter it is in, the girl whose chapter it is. And it's done over 24 hours, so the time is important. And so you get the location, the time, the time remaining, because there's a 24-hour
Okay, I get you.
going on, and then the name of the character, and then where they are. So yeah, it's different again. Trying to again, it's fun. I can play with structure a bit more, I think, in those books. So.
Yeah, you're very much, you appear to be very interested in like turning things on their head and exploring how you can take your craft and explore it in different ways and challenge yourself. So you've been writing, how long have you been writing
forever? That feels like so 1999. 1999 was when I started. Like that was when I started writing the first that November, and then God knows what year we are now. Don't even know how many years that is. So long time. But the book, though, and Little Bones was published in 2016. So although it was signed and everything, the contract was all done in 2015. So that's so 10 years, I suppose now. We're nearly there. We're 2024 now, aren't we? So
so changing things up then, I suppose, is helping you to keep the genre not only fresh for yourself, but for the readers and your audience, I suppose, that you're not following any predictable formula, which is very interesting, really, because that's, it's more fun and more playful for yourself too, I would imagine. Is it difficult to get them through publishing then, like in the sense, or get them published, because are you trying to sell this new style of writing?
I think every book is a Sam Blake book. And so my editor, every time I go for a new contract, I pitch the story ideas to her. And, there could be 6, 8 story ideas, and she'll go, well, I really like this one, or I, like this one. Sometimes there's only one. It depends. But, so she knows what she's getting. Mm-hmm. She's got like a bit of a story, an idea of what the story's going to be about before we begin. And then she just lets me go off and write it, actually. But yeah, I suppose there's a bit of a risk in terms of the fact that, say, Mystery of Four was very Agatha Christie. And that was a bit of a departure from other stuff that I'd done. Carla is much more like the police procedurals, and is much grittier than the Mystery of Four. So that's probably the grittiest book I've written, if you like. Certainly probably the most graphic. Not wanting to put anybody off, but if you get the bit with the blue bottles, you can just skip that bit if you don't like gruesome bits. So as soon as you see a blue bottle, just skip on. And so the blue bottles are actually, there's a whole story behind the blue bottles and research, but I can tell you about that another time. So they are different. So, and then Paris is different again. So but I think people know that there's a similarity because it's my voice, and I suppose my techniques and my characters, there's a similarity there. So you know what you're getting. You're getting a book that's going to take you somewhere else, that is going to be, it's going to have strong female characters. It's going to have, it's going to have twists. It's going to have an unexpected ending, I hope. I don't know what you think you're getting with the Sam Blake book, but that's what I'm hoping you're getting. And so you have that confidence, I suppose, that if you like me, then, and you like my books, then that's what you're going to get, even though that they might vary in style a bit, or structure or whatever. So.
And can we ask you about Sam Blake? So as a pen name, can you tell us why and how it came about, if you're happy to discuss it?
Absolutely. So my proper name is Vanessa Fox O Loughlin, which is enormously long and wouldn't fit on a cover. And also in the UK, people do struggle with O'Loughlin. Like, they're fine with everything else, but they get to O'Loughlin and they get to the O, and then they sort of freeze up and they don't quite know where to go with the rest of it because they don't know what the GH does. So, and so that, and also it's a very hard one to remember because it's so ridiculously long. So if you hear me on the radio and you've got this, it's like, you're only going to catch a bit of it. You're not going to remember it all. So we knew that going in, that it was this long name and it was going to be hard to pronounce. And also one of the other big factors here is that there's an awful lot of men, or I should say some men, because they get very upset. The other men get very upset when I say this, who don't read crime written by women. And so that was another factor. And so when we were looking at a name, we thought, well, yeah, it makes to use a different name for all of these different reasons. And so we came up with, after a lot of thinking, came up with Sam Blake. And it's an easy name, and it's a name you feel like you've heard it before. It's the type of name, it's an easy one to hear. If you hear it on the radio, you're not going to forget it. It's an easy one to Google. There's no problems with spelling. It's easy for people to say. So, so it works all around. And I love it. I love being Sam Blake because it's sort of, in some ways, it helps me again, a lot of my life is quite compartmentalized to try and, get all the different, so at the start we were talking about I have quite a lot on. And so it really helps me in terms of writing, and I am Sam Blake in my head when when I'm writing. So it works for me as well. It's like, because obviously I have all this crazy people in my head, and I have a crazy person called Sam Blake too. So it all works.
Do you get into character to write? That's brilliant. Would you have any other kind of rituals and stuff that you might do to get yourself in the zone for writing, or do you literally just sit down and go for it? Any quirky habits or anything that helped the creative juices flow?
No, when I was writing the Kat Connolly books, I was quite busy then too. I'm always quite busy. So finding space in my head to write was quite tricky. So what I had with Kat Connolly was a soundtrack, which was the music that she would have listened to, because she's significantly younger than me. And so I had her sort of YouTube soundtrack, if you like, playing. So I used to plug my earphones in the computer, put the soundtrack on, and the minute I heard it, I knew I was back in the zone for writing those books. So that was great. And then when I wrote, which one was it? With the ballerina, Keep Your Eyes on Me has an ex-ballerina, and I was listening to a lot of classical music because that fitted with her. So from that point of view, sometimes I do listen to music, but because I'm busy, I write in bursts, and I can write anywhere. So I love writing on planes, or planes are brilliant for writing because there's no internet, nobody can disturb you, and you can just focus. Trains and cafes and anywhere. I'll write anywhere, and I like that. So actually, when it came to COVID and I was stuck in the house, I find writing at my desk can be quite difficult because there's so much going on. My desk is a big mess. People have these clean desks. Mine is covered in bits of paper. And about 30 books over here in a big pile that I need to work through. And so sometimes the noise from the desk makes it difficult to focus. I've actually got two screens now. I've now got this normal screen behind. Obviously, we're on my laptop here, but behind us, you can't see. Behind me, behind you, I should say, is a big screen. And when I find that much easier because I'm looking at that, and so I find it. So it's not so hard to write in my office now. But the whole thing about COVID was that I was moving around the house and people kept shouting at me because I was in the kitchen, and they're like, "You can't work in here, go to your office." So I actually ended up setting up a camp in the spare bedroom, and getting the IKEA table out, and I had the candles lit there, and it was more zen. And I felt like it was going away because I could just go up to the spare bedroom and hide, and nobody bothered me. So that's where I wrote Cart.
I love these little insights into everyone's writing process. So just to move on to maybe a bit more of your past, would you always have been a reader, or, what are your earliest memories of reading?
Yes, always a reader, massive reader. I don't get as much time now as I'd like to, but I'm the chair of the Creasy Dagger with the Dagger Award for the Crime Writers Association. So I've got a lot of books to read for that. So I'm working my way through. So there's I don't even know how many there are. 100 books. I don't know. That we're working our way through. So I'm reading those at the moment. And so, it's hard because they have to be read in a particular period. So there's lots of books. I've literally got 3 books on the desk that I'm dying to read. I'm halfway through Andrea's book, which I'm loving, Someone in the Attic, and so there's lots of books I'd love to read, but I'm reading the others first, which is great because it means you get that variety. Because I think you can you read what you like, I suppose. I read books by people I know very often, and the variety, and it's not that there isn't variety in that, but it's good. It's good. The Dagger's great because you're getting a huge number of books that you wouldn't necessarily pick up. So that's great. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. So yes, big reader, and I read crime.
No, it does, right? Like you say, you read crime as well, which obviously is very important to your role as a writer, but also as someone who helps writers. But would your favourite book ever be a crime/thriller book?
So my biggest book of all time is Rebecca.
Great choice.
And I have a whole collection on the shelf behind me here. But that's my first edition. I have the first edition of Rebecca. It was issued during the war, and I have a whole collection of them, of different editions. Rebecca's done in loads and loads of beautiful covers. And to me, that is the book. It's everything. It's a mystery, it's a romance, it's multi-layered, it's got imagery and symbolism, and to me, it's the absolute most amazing, perfect book. And I did a thing on the radio a while ago, a culture club thing on whichever station culture club's on, I've now forgotten. Today FM, is it? And they talk about your favorite films and your favorite music and stuff like that, and and I was talking about your favorite book, and they played the audio, because I hadn't listened to the audio of Rebecca, and I realized in one of these like light bulb moments that actually Daphne du Maurier summarizes the entire plot within the first 5 or 6 lines. So the first line is obviously last night I dreamed of Vandelay, but if you keep reading down just 3 or 4 other lines, it's nearly the whole story. And it was only when I heard it that I realised. So it's a book that you can read again and again and again. You get different stuff every time. So
I had never noticed that either. It's a bit of a mind blown moment now, actually, that you say it.
Yeah, it's literally. I didn't see it when I was reading it. So when I heard it, I was like, oh my goodness, the skill that's gone into that is just amazing. So yeah, I love that. That's my all-time favourite book. The book that I think everybody should read.
Okay,
it answers every single question when it comes to things like that. So love it.
So that's obviously a book that you would recommend to people. Is there any book then that you would say is an underrated book, or maybe, to put it another way, a book that everybody should read that maybe they haven't?
Yeah, I don't think so. I can't think. I was desperately trying to think of one, but I'm sure there's lots of books that people should read that maybe, don't hit the big list. But I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm always recommending Rebecca to everybody all the time, and it is one of the biggest selling books of all time. So it's sold millions of copies. So I don't think that counts as underrated. But it really doesn't. That's nice. That's where you're always aspiring to. There's a gorgeous book. The book I suppose I loved in childhood that I'm always, again, it's not underrated because it won an award in its time, is a book called The Little White Horse by Elizabeth Goudge, and that's an amazing book. And if you've read it, you're like, oh God, yes. Every single person I've ever met who's read it's like, oh my goodness. There's this amazing book about an orphan called Maria Merriweather who goes to live with her uncle in Merriweather Hall, and she discovers, so it's sort of part fantasy because she looks out of the window and she sees a little white horse, and we realise as the story progresses the little white horse is actually a unicorn.
Oh, okay.
And it's just full of the most incredible characters. There's a glass house behind Merriweather Hall, and this little gnomey chap lives in there, and he grows geraniums. And so the entire glass house is full of these brilliant pink geraniums. And whenever you say to somebody, Elizabeth Goudge, Little White Horse, they go, geraniums. And it's like there's a couple of things that will stick in your head. Maria Merriweather had this round bedroom with the stars painted on the ceiling and a little fireplace, and honestly I can still see that. I'm still there in the room with her. That's a fabulous book. And again, I suppose because it was published feels like an awful long time ago now. I'm looking for my copy now. I'm speaking to you.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, no, Elizabeth Goudge, Little White Horse, amazing book. So I suppose that would be it. Isn't underrated. It's not underrated because it won like the Carnegie Medal or something in the year it was published, but it was a good while ago, and so not everybody would have heard of it. But it is beautiful. It's written in quite sort of old-fashioned language, if you like, because it's sort of turn of the century. If anybody who loved the Wolves of Willoughby Chase and books like that, Joan Aiken, and those types of books, that I think I read it around that time I was reading those, and it's just powerful because the images and the memories of the images that she managed to describe are just, it's stunning. It's a stunning book, and there's all sorts of things that you don't expect to come out at the end. Like you didn't know the unicorn was the unicorn until. Well, I think now there's my version of it is an old one, but the more recent copy actually has a white horse with a unicorn, and you can see it's a unicorn because it's obviously got a horn. But I think in the book you don't realise for ages in the book that it's a unicorn. So, but yeah, no, it's gorgeous book. Yeah, highly recommend that.
Like, I know you said that it won awards and stuff, but that definitely, I feel, fits the bill for underrated because it's something that people probably haven't heard about, and regardless of critical acclaim, it obviously, or it may not have the same modern audience as what it did at the time. So I think that definitely fits the bill.
Definitely, everybody should read this book. Yeah.
One last question, so before you go, if you could have dinner with 3 fictional characters, who would they be?
I think they would be Miss Marple, Sherlock Holmes, and probably Michael Connelly's character, Hieronymus Bosch.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they'd actually get on together very well. Morse might be the best one, like in that group, in terms of them all getting on and having a bit of a chat. But I love him as a character too. So maybe it should be, because obviously when you're planning a dinner party, you don't want people to clash. So, Sherlock Holmes, Miss Marple, and Morse would be fantastic. And I think they'd all get on very well too. We'd have a great old chat. But I'd love to have a chat to Harry Bosch too. He'd probably be a different dinner party.
But you need a bit of excitement at a dinner party as well, a bit of drama.
Well, exactly. But you want people to enjoy themselves too. And I can see them all getting on very well and having a great old chat. But definitely those three would be great.
Now, we finish up all of our episodes with a quick fire round. It's a this or that question. Would you be interested in...
Give it a go?
Super. So it is, as Claire said, one option or the other. Feel free to elaborate or not. Both are perfectly fine. So, question 1. Hardback or paperback?
Actually, recently hardback, because I've been reading all these creasy books and a lot of them are hardbacks, and there's nothing more lovely. It's a very solid feeling.
Excellent.
Sure.
Number 2, judge a book by its cover, yes or no?
Yeah, I think we all do. Yeah, we all definitely do. That's just one of those. It's a marketing. I worked in marketing for a long time, so I completely get that. But yes, you do. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Actually, I'm just going to back up there. In fact, sorry, because I've been reading some classics recently, and some of them have got quite strange covers. So actually, sometimes the book, if I've just read Perfume by Patrick Süskind, and there's a beautiful painting on the front, but it doesn't exactly jump out at you as being the book that it is. So
that is perfectly fine. I love sometimes, how we talk ourselves out of our own answers. Next question, series or standalone?
Oh, both, I think. My lads say that. It depends. Depends on the strength of the character, I think. I love series books, like Harry Bosch. Oh my goodness, amazing. Karen Slaughter's series characters, amazing. So I love series books too. And obviously when I came into this business, I ended up writing a procedural. So that was a series book. And I think, I do obviously the kids' books are series books. Carla might be a series. So but I love standalone too. It's a mixture. Sorry, not a good answer.
There is no wrong answer to this. You're grand. The next one, a dog ear your books or bookmark?
Oh dear. Well, I think that's like confession time, isn't it? So in fact, possibly, I used to be always dog ear, but my husband shouts at me all the time if he even sees it. So now I'm very much a bookmark person, or anything that's handy, like a pen or whatever it might be, that just to hold the place. Yeah. I can remember page numbers, so why I don't just page number, I don't know. But anyway, sorry, moving on.
I actually do that all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, page 88. And then the next day I'm like, was it page 88 or not? So I really should actually bookmark it properly. But anyway.
I remember it. It's ridiculous. No, I can remember them, and it's weird because I can't. I'm really rubbish with numbers. I mean, utterly hopeless. And but I can remember page numbers. So anyway, sorry, moving on.
Next, DNF or power through?
It depends, doesn't it? Sometimes I think if I really feel that I can't finish it, and I suppose there's a qualifier to this, because not every book is for every person. Do you know what I mean? And I know that, and I know not everybody who reads my books loves them. Particularly if you read the reviews every now and again, there's somebody in there who's like, why did you bother? You do, and that applies to us all. It's quite hilarious, actually. But I think not every book is for every person, so I don't have a problem not finishing, but quite often I'm curious to see what's going on at the end. So I'll get to a point where I'm like, honestly, I'm not invested in this, but I want to know what happens. So I might do the worst thing ever and skip the end.
Oh,
another sin. Yes. Be strung up.
Oh, that is controversial. That leads nicely into one of our next questions. If you could only read the first page or the last page of a book, which would it be?
Oh, if I was going to read, no, only the first. If I only had one page to read, I'd read the first page. Because I think last page doesn't mean anything if you haven't read the first page. But if you can't hook the reader, our job as writers is to hook you in that first page. And if we don't manage that, then to me, we're not necessarily succeeding. So we I mean, sometimes you have to give it a couple of pages, but you know, that's the objective, is to draw you in. So yeah, first page.
Next question. Would you rather meet the main character of your last book or become them?
Would I be Carla? Probably meet her, because I think I'd really like her. I think meet her probably, yeah, because I think I'd feel a bit weird being her, because she's so real to me. So she's like a real person. So yeah, and she's, although that, having said that, she's way younger than me, so that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Actually, yeah, I think we'd all pick that option maybe for that reason. The next one, if you could only read mediocre books for the entire year, or would you prefer one stunning book once a year and that's it?
One stunning book once a year.
Very good. Question 9. Would you prefer one of your books to be made into a film or a TV series?
I don't mind. I don't mind at all. Yeah. Yeah, there's always people are always talking about options the whole time. It's like, you know, back and forwards. And when Kat Connolly's books are all optioned, and you just never know. 9 times out of 10 they get optioned and nothing ever happens with them. So yeah, no. So I don't mind anything they like, they can do with it. Be very happy for either.
And our last question: do you prefer being a writer or helping others write?
I love both, actually. I really do. So that's a 50-50. I mean, I love writing, obviously. And yeah, and I couldn't do the other without the writing, my own writing. So probably, yeah, if I have to choose, being a writer, because if I wasn't a writer, I wouldn't be able to help them. But I do really love helping other people.
A lovely answer. Thank you so much. I think possibly you even learned stuff about yourself through some of these answers.
Must be. Nice.
Thank you.
It was fun. It's lovely to chat to you. And that's really interesting. Good, very good questions.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask one question, actually? So you do these writing courses and all that kind of stuff, all those bits. If anybody wanted to get involved in that, where can they find you, or where would you direct them to get themselves started with working with you?
If they go to Writing.ie and just put Writers Inc. into the search bar, then they'll find an article about the next challenge, which is coming up, or Writers Inc. itself. And so, yeah, it's a group that we run on Facebook. It's paid. It's just there's a small monthly fee, and we do a whole load of different stuff in it. So we have a writing prompt every Wednesday. I put tips in every Tuesday. I do an AMA on a Monday. We have a live session every week, and then I critique 500 words, and we all critique everybody's work. But I'm there. I try and do as many as I can each week. So, you know, potentially if you join, you can get 2,000 words critiqued a month, not necessarily by me, but certainly by the group, who are fantastic at critiquing at this stage. It's fun. It's lovely. They're great. And we've got some really great, Michelle McDonough, who was published last year and hit the bestseller list.
Oh, wow.
Of our people. And Ruth O'Leary, who has written Weekend Break, the book's just coming out. I think the launch is next. So there's a whole bunch of people who either have deals now or who are moving forward. So it's wonderful to see that happening.
Excellent.
Yes, very good. Great. And they're a lovely bunch too. They're really, really, really warm and welcoming. And it's great to see everybody's writing, because it's all so different. And that's when you really get a sense of voice. One of the most important things in writing is about voice and people developing their own voice. And you only do that through writing. So it took me 3.5 books to develop my voice. But when I did, I knew I got it. And but when you see all the different writing each week, you know, like on a Thursday when they put their samples in, and on a Wednesday when they're doing the prompt, you just get a really strong sense of how important voice is, because you can see it in all the different styles.
Love it.
So it's exciting, fun. Writers Inc. for anybody who wants to join.
Thank you very much. Yeah, plug that one.
Another good question. Thank you.
Right, we've taken up an awful lot of your time now.
That was lovely.
I think we all really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much again. We really appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Another Chapter podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share to keep the book conversation going. Thank you to Helen Becerra for the graphics.
Mark Neville for the mixing, and to each of our contributors. Music is Make It Work by All Good Folks.
Don't forget to follow along on Instagram at Another Chapter Podcast. We'll see you there.